Bruchim Abayim, Morai Rabotai, to another weekly shiur on Parashat with the Perush of Zera Shimshon from Rav Shimshon Chaim ben Nachman Michael Alav Shalom, one of the Gdolei Italia. As we mentioned, his Chuyot, tremendous personality of Torah, one of the Gdolei Ador in Italia, and this was in the generation of Or Chaim HaKadosh, and he promises, he commits himself to whoever learns his Sefer that he should become like his child, and he will advocate on their behalf for whatever it is that they need, especially for Zera Shel Kayama, hence Zera Shimshon, but for Shidduchim and for other Yeshuot as well. So therefore there should be a Yeshua for all of those who have been working to making this a possibility. What a beautiful, wonderful crowd. Baruch Hashem. I want to specifically thank Eldad and his Rebbetzin for putting this together to begin with, and their families of Suleiman Teherani families, Baal Nes family, and also the co-sponsor of today, Leilu Nishmat. This is by Shea family, Leilu Nishmat Akram Bad Moshe, that just passed away, and this should be Leilu Nishmata, Amen. So also should be for Zechut of Zera Shel Kayama, for Ledad ben Ma'anaz Miriam, Bracha bat Marcel Dina, Tehila bat Bracha Afsaneh, Yonatan ben Faridem, Ariel Yochai ben Afsaneh, Esther bat Romina, Ariel bat Angela, Esther bat Flora, Nisim ben Avraham, and also for Zivug Hagun, for Ezra ben Marcel Dina, Sarah bat Penina, Yisrael ben Sarah Uva bat Zipporah, Devorah bat Ronit, Nava Tehila. And I want to also specifically share in the zechut over here, something that's very dear to me, for Refuah Shelema of Rachel bat Nahid, that should have full recovery, Refuah Shelema, Amen. Okay, so let's begin. Parashat Miketz is the second parasha about Yosef HaTzadik in the Chumash, and Yosef is a very mysterious person, very mysterious. He's probably the most mysterious person in the whole Chumash. He's the Baal HaChalomot. He's the one that's dealing Hayinu Kecholmim. The end of days, we're going to be, Hayinu Kecholmim. That's how it's described. It's like a chalom. It's like a dream. And of course, we know the process of our Geulah starts with Mashiach ben Yosef, prior to the Mashiach ben David, which we're going to speak about. But this week's parasha is going to speak about something very interesting, and that is the dreams of Paro. We have been introduced in previous parasha of the dreams of Yosef, of the dreams of the butler and the baker. I challenge people, by the way, to find 12 dreams in the whole thing. If you could come up with 12 dreams, that means you really know the Chumash with the Midrashim and the Rishonim well. But again, Parashat of Yosef is all about dreams. And he is the Baal HaChalomot. He is the owner of the Chalomot. He's the one that knows how to interpret Chalomot of dreams. And this time, it's going to actually be his salvation. He's there in the dungeon for now 12 years. And Paro Cholem. Paro has a dream, and he sees very much similar to the parallel with the two dreams of Yosef, which is for a different time maybe. But he has a dream of Parot, of Sheva Parot, 7 beautiful, fat, nice, fed and healthy cows that come from Nile River, and then 7 ugly, non-healthy, thin, very bad looking cows come afterwards, and they swallow them, and as if nothing happened. They swallow the big ones, the healthy ones, and as though they ate nothing. And he wakes up, he's disturbed, he goes back to sleep. He has another parallel dream with this. Now this time with Shibolim. He sees 7 bundles of wheat, beautiful, full, fat, nice, healthy. They come out from the Nile River, and then next to them come out 7 destroyed, smushed and creviced, completely damaged bundles of wheat, and they kind of overpower, and the healthy ones completely disappear as if nothing happened, and the bad bundles are still looking disgusting and very weak. He gets up, he knows something is going on. Vesaper lekol chartumei Misraim. He says to all the Hachamim, all the Hartumim, ve'en poter otam leParo. They told him all kinds of different things, but nothing sat with him. Right? They said, oh, you'll have 7 daughters, 7 son-in-laws, and this, they're going to die, they're going to be born. All kinds of different things. It wasn't true. And you know when it's not true. Nikarim divrei ha'emet. So, the bottler, Sar Mashkim, remembers 2 years ago what happened with Yosef, and it says, oh, Sham itanu na'ar ivri, eved l'sar tabachim, and he was good. He said it, he got everything on the head. He hit the target, didn't miss a detail. The days, the amount of things, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, everything. Even the emotions and so on, which we spoke about on Shabbat. So Paro brings him on. And, of course, Yosef interprets his chalomot. There's going to be 7 years of sova, of tremendous plentifulness, and then it's going to be followed by 7 years of famine. Such a famine that you've never seen in Egypt before, to the degree that nobody would ever remember even that you had a plentiful year. That's how bad it's going to be. That's what Yosef said. And he said, the reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing you 2 dreams is because Nachon hadavar me'im Elokim. He wants, this is going to happen. And it's going to start immediately. That's the interpretation of 2 times. Okay, fine, beautiful. But there's a question. There's a question that's worth asking, and that's exactly what Zera Shimshon starts with. So wait a second. Why do you need 2 dreams? And why these 2? Why about Parot and Shibolim? Just repeat the same dream twice. Like the Shulchan Aruch says, if a dream repeats itself twice, you know to take it seriously. But this was not the same dream. This was a different dream. So why do you have to have the Parot and the Shibolim? Why? What's the significance of each one of them, and why both? Just do the Shibolim. Shibolim makes sense. Parot, it makes sense. So if you want to indicate plentifulness and you want to indicate famine, fine. Do the dream of the bundles, the stalks of wheat. But why do you have to have the Parot? What's the significance of Parot? That's how he starts with, and this he brings from the Sefer Zera Brach in Chelek Aleph. Ma'inyan HaParot. What does cow have to do with plentifulness? And says the Zera Shimshon, Venir'eh letares. He asked the question, so I'm going to answer it. Now he's going to say later that the question doesn't even start. But says let's answer his question first, once he asks it. Nir'eh letaretz b'mash katvu ha'mefarshim. This is really brought, he does not bring it here, but it's brought from Sefer HaKavanot already, the holy sources of Kabbalah. She'oto halayla, we say this, and Rashi brings it as well, that oto halayla, the night that Paro had this dream, was Leil Rosh Hashanah, was the night of Rosh Hashanah. How do we know this? Of course, because the Gemara says in Masechet Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud that Yosef stood in front of Paro on Rosh Hashanah. So hence, of course, the night before was the night of Rosh Hashanah. So it says, by the way, this indication is a serious indication because the Gemara says that not just spiritually, but physically, what you're going to have is decided on Rosh Hashanah, right? We know the Gemara in Masechet Betzah, Daf Tetzayin Amud Aleph, the first line, the Gemara in Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Yud, Kol mezonotav shel Adam ktuvot lo me Rosh Hashanah v'ad Yom HaKippurim. Gemara in Baba Batra adds, Kol mezonotav v'chesronotav, everything that you're going to gain and lose is going to be decided. Now afterwards you could change it maybe a little bit, but it's going to be very hard. The structure of your year is decided on Rosh Hashanah. And hence, here is adding that not only for us everything is, but even for the Goyim. Like really, the Gemara says this in Masechet Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Zayin also. The Gemara there says, the Kol Ba'ei Olam, Ovrin Lefanav, Kevnei Meron. Yud Zayin and Yud Chet, the Gemara says, all of the Ba'ei Olam, not just the Jews, everybody goes in front of Hashem on Rosh Hashanah, Kevnei Meron. And here is Mechadesh, that even the umot, even the nations, the governments, all of that is going to be decided as well. By the way, once we're on Chanukah right now, let me just add a little bit because this is powerful. It's brought in Sifrei Hasidut. This is really brought from the Likutei Maharil. It's a serious source. It's not just a Hasidic source. It brings that the real final level of the ptakim, of the decrees of Rosh Hashanah, is handed over to the agencies to be done on the last day of Chanukah. So still we have, especially so far, it has not been so good this year apparently in Eretz Yisrael. I'm not sure what happened up there on Rosh Hashanah. Really every year that you don't have shofar, historically has been very difficult, but nevertheless, Rosh Hashanah was on Shabbat, the first day, and we'll be davening probably for the next 4 days, 5 days, much harder knowing this, and this is brought, again, Rabbi Shimon Sofer in his Teshuvot, Hit'orut Teshuvah, he brings this as well. Legit sources here. And Bnei Yisachar, by the way, says, once this is for Zera Shekayama, Bnei Yisachar adds that just like Rosh Hashanah has a zchut for Zera Shel Kayama, the 8th day of Chanukah also has a zchut for Zera Shel Kayama. All those skulot of Rosh Hashanah, he writes, you have, again, this was in this maybe more of a Hasidic source, the Bnei Yisachar, holy Bnei Yisachar, but he says that the Pkidah Akarot happened, we know, Chana, Sarah, all happened, Hashem Pakadet Sarah, all happened on Rosh Hashanah. And that, he says, applies also on Chanukah, which is tremendous. We have days still to go and reverse the negative gezerot and decrease Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. So we have the Zera Shimshon now continuing. He says, "Ochshe Yisrael mitgabrim b'shofar." You know what happens? On Rosh Hashanah we blow the shofar, and when the Jews are mitgaber b'shofar, when you blow the shofar, Yotzim golot ubrakim v'shofrim salemala. The koach of shofar is to destroy the bad decrees of the gezerot raot. As we know, right? It says, Kedeh she'aleh zichronchem lefanai letova. The Gemara says, when you do the shofar, that destroys the negativity. Fine. And therefore, v'ha'uma nofelet. So, what he's saying, without saying it, is, you first have to destroy the spiritual powers before the physical ummah, the physical enemy, falls. In other words, you want Gaza to go away, or the terrorists to go away. It's not the IDF necessarily only. That's the tool. But the energy behind it is the zchuyot that we have. We find this many places. We have this in previous Parashat by Yaakov, when he wants to meet up with Esav after 20 years. He first meets who? Saro shel Esav. And only when he defeats the Saro shel Esav, when Esav comes in front of him with 400 men, he melts away and he starts kissing and hugging. He looks like a Persian guy, hugging everyone, kissing everyone. He was a killer. He was a serial killer. What? Because the koach of Saro shel Esav was nullified already before. This is Gemara in Masechet Yuma, Daf Lamed Tet, Amud Aleph Amud Bet. Gemara there says, when Titos and Nebuchadnezzar, when they destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, a Bat Kol came. Imagine this. Envision this. A Bat Kol came and said to them, he said, Bayit Saruf Sarafta. Right? Ish Harug Harakta. Kemach Tachun Tachanta. So you think you did anything? This was already ground up flour, you re-ground it up. It already was gone. Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. The Midrash in Echa writes, 18 years before, Shekhinah started being mistalek, so it was like an empty shell of a makom that used to be the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash, you would never be able to destroy Titos, Rasha, Ben Beno Shel Rasha. He said, you think you did it. You didn't do it, I did it. And that's really in every aspect. The spiritual power is what pushes and keeps up every aspect of the physical world that we deal with. The Ramchal explains this in multiple places at length with the Chazal, that every grass has a malach on it. Everything that's physical, you have a spiritual power that's attached to it. And that's what keeps this. If that's going well, nobody could touch this. Right? And if this goes away, then anybody could do it. Right? So he says, the shofar is what destroys the koach of the umot, and then we could defeat them. That's why you have the parot. Why? Because, says the Zera Shimshon, what is a shofar that is not kasher? The Gemara says a shofar of a cow is not called shofar. It's called keren. It's called the horn, not the shofar. And therefore it's pasul. For sure, if you take a beautiful long shofar of of a cow, pasul, completely, as if you did nothing, right? On Rosh Hashanah, nothing. It's not a shofar, it's a keren, it's a horn. Now, the Gemara learns this from the Psukim. Not time for getting into the details of this, but says Zera Shimshon, u'berosh Hashanah tokim Yisrael b'shofar. V'shel para pasul mipene shenikra keren. Just like the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Chaf Vav Amud Aleph, it's called keren and therefore pasul, right? Now, uchtiv v'karnei reshaim agadea. The keren of Reshaim, that means keren, which is for a cow, it's attributed to Reshaim. And Hashem says, I will cut off their power, their keren, their horn. Karnei Reshaim agadeas. Therefore, the good and the bad of the Goyim comes always exemplified in parot, right? Teromamna karnot tzaddik. And the end of the pasuk says, the keren of the tzaddik will be raised above, and it will be rising above the Reshaim. All the power of the Mitzrayim was bishvil hasova va'kesef va'zahav. They didn't have zchuyot. They had money, they had power, they had politics, army, and so on. Hakol yenebad miMitzrayim. Once the zchut of the Jews goes up, the Mitzrayim is going to be destroyed. Ve'yele Israel, and it's going to be all going to the Jews, which happened at the end, right? They emptied out Mitzrayim completely, right? A few years ago, Egyptian government wanted to charge them for all the things they took. I don't know how would they even assess it. And the Jews, of course, they right away said it was dead on arrival. They said, first pay us 400 years of slavery, then we'll sit and cheshbon what's happening. But nevertheless, he says all of those things are spiritual powers. Misrayim. And says also, aside from that, Teromamna karnot tzaddik ze Yosef. We learned that Teromamna karnot tzaddik is a reference to Yosef. She'yatza mibet hasurim v'nasa melech. Right? He was nothing. He was in dungeon, and now in one moment he was elevated to become the most powerful man in the world. Because the Egyptian empire was the greatest empire of the time. And Paro basically told him, like, I'm going to go to sleep, just don't kill me, you could do whatever you want. And, al picha yishak kolami, and nobody is going to do anything without your permission. Rak hakiseh egdal mimecha. Only the throne is what differentiates between me and you, but you're in charge, basically. That's teromamna karnot tzaddik. Now, I want to add something which I'm not sure why he does not bring, but I think very much so. Yosef is an element of shor. What's the bracha of Yosef? Ben porat Yosef. Ale shor. Which the Midrash says that was the kamiyah that Moshe Rabbeinu sent to the water to bring out the coffin of Yosef, and then they put it in the fire with the gold, and the egel hazahav came out, which is a whole thing to talk about the money that Yosef got. It's a lot to talk about there, but shor is certainly Yosef. It says, what's the bechor shoro hadarlo bekarnei re'em karnav. Bechor shoro, it's a shor. It's a kosher one, but he's the one that karnei re'em karnav. He has the keren to deal with the goyim. That's Yosef. I mean, this is straightforward. It seems to be much better than the proofs that are brought over here. And really, the truth is, if you want to go a little deeper, Bechor Shoro, that means the Yosef was supposed to be the Bechor, had Lavan not switched Rachel with Leah. The only reason was because Hashem saw Kisenua Leah, and she merited to have children. Otherwise, Rachel would have been the first one, and Yosef would be the Bechor. And still, by the way, Al Pi Kabbalah, the Pasuk in Yecheskel, the beginning, which talks about the Maaseh Merkava, talks about the fact that there are 4 different surot on the Merkava of Hashem. These are the deepest things of Kabbalah, which the Mishnah and the Gemara in Masechet Chagigah discuss. But nevertheless, the surot that they are there, one is Penei Aryeh, a lion. Lion is the king of Chayot, and who is that? Gur Aryeh Yehuda. That's Yehuda, which is the internal king of Am Yisrael, and he's the final Mashiach. But Shor is the other image that's on the Kisah Kavod of Hashem, and that is Melech Shel Behemot. It's the king of Behemot, and that's Yosef, hence Mashiach ben Yosef, and deeper things that are beyond the scope of this talk. But you see where this is going, right? The image of Yosef being elevated over Mitzrayim is the shore, which really was implementing, and Yosef, of course, was not going to say that directly, but he indirectly said it, and Chazal mentioned this, but Chazal don't say that this was his interpretation of the Chalom, because there's a question that he doesn't ask, we're going to ask. Who asked Yosef to give a suggestion after he interpreted the dreams? You did it, get out. What does Yosef do? He says, Ata, now that you know this, Yafket, Paro should get a Ish Chacham Venavon and appoint him over Mitzrayim to handle all of this. Who asked you to do that? And of course, Paro right away says, Acharei Odia Elokim Lecha Kol Zot, and right, there's nobody that's Chacham Venavon like you, and therefore he made him the viceroy immediately, right? Where does that come from? I believe one could say maybe that was the part of the Chalom of the Par, that Yosef saw himself to be referenced to come up and deal with the situation at hand with Mitzrayim. Fine. V'chol zeh, says the Zera Shimshon. All this is because we had a question over here, right? We had a question of why do you need parot? Right? This is Zera Brach in Chelik Aleph asked it. But says Zera Shimshon, I don't think the question really even starts. Omnam lefi ha'emet nireh dekusha mikara leka. It's not a kusha, it's not a question. Why? Because the Pasuk says in Mishlei, Shlomo HaMelech says in Perek Yudalet in Mishlei, V'rav tevuot bekoach shor, that the agricultural system of back yesteryear was directly dependent on the plowing and planting. And he says because there are two ways that the tevuah, the produce, could go bad. One is a defect in planting, and the other was when it grows, it could go bad for be infested and whatnot. So here, if you don't have a strong shore, it's going to be defective from the very beginning. If it's not deep enough in the ground, if it's not plowed well, and so on and so forth. So it says directly is dependent with shore is not something that you have to ask and answer and connect it with Yosef necessarily. It is very much connected with the source of agricultural success in the time of Yosef. And he says, the shore is the cause of having plentiful year. Berov koach. He brings the Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Chagiga Daf Gimel Amud Bet. Amrinan, Mother Rabban, he's talking about the pasuk there. Divrei Chachamim ki darbonot. He doesn't bring the pasuk, but darbon is a stick with a little piece of metal on top of it. That when they plowed the land, if the cow would go a little bit astray, they would, give a little nudge to get him to the straight path. So Divrei Chachamim is ki darbonot. You see, Lavi Chayim leolam. It's like the telamim of the para, like the plowing of the cow that brings life to the world. So you see, it's directly connected. Fine. The other one is when it grows, it could be going bad. Therefore, this, he says so beautifully, he says, therefore he had the two dreams. You had the dream of the para to show that after 7 years of plentifulness, the Zri'ah is going to be ruined. You could do the best, it's not going to work. It's not going to bring out any produce. And even though it's going to be very lakui, and even if you have something from before, you have saved up, all of those are going to go back. That's the second dream of the shibolim that you already have bundled and stored away in the silos. There's going to be destroyed as well, which is what Rashi brings in the Chumash that actually happened. Therefore, everybody right away needed Yosef, even though that people knew it's going to happen and they were storing up. All of those went bad, aside from what Yosef had stored. Beautiful piece of Zera Shimshon. I just want to have one little piece added to this, and that is the power of Yosef. We spoke about Yosef. We spoke about his koach. But really, what we alluded to yesterday, Suda Shlishit as well, Yosef, as we mentioned, is a mysterious person. And you see that Yaakov Avinu needs Yosef more than any of the other Shvatim. Remember, when Yaakov Avinu wants to face Esav, he's afraid to move. Until who is born? As soon as Yosef is born, even though there's a baby, he's a little kid. He says, Shalachenina, send me. And I could face Esav. Now I could face the world out there. Because Yaakov himself was in his own Babel. Right? He was a Ishtam Yoshev Alim. He learned. And when he came to conflicts, he was very straightforward. He gets in fight with Rachel. When Rachel says something out of line, he was punished for it. But he gets with Lavan, right? Vayarev Yaakov, he fights with him. He's yelling at Lavan. Yosef is the power of dealing with the Umot HaOlam without yelling. He takes every single value of Yaakov Avinu with straight face, without compromising an iota of his Torah and his values, and he takes it to the heart of Paro's palace. He takes it to the heart of everyone. Remember, when the family stood in front of Esav, how was the setup of the mothers and the children? Every mother was protecting their children. As Leah v'Iladea, Bila v'Iladea, Zilpa v'Iladea. V'achar kach nigash Yosef v'Rachel. But Yosef says, I'm not going to let this Rasha take a gaze at my mother. He'll go to Azazel before he will do that. And he's 6 years old, for God. He's a little kid. But he's not afraid of anybody. But he does it with a gentle face. He stands in front of Paro, who announces himself publicly, I am God and I created everything, including myself. Therefore, he claimed that he doesn't go to the bathroom. He would go to Nile every morning to relieve himself. And imagine, you have one shot at this. You're in dungeon, you're getting out, and you have one shot. You one bite on this apple. You mess this up, your head is on a spike. At the best, you're going to be spending the rest of your life in the dungeon. And you stand there, what are you going to say? Paro says, oh, I heard you're great. Tishma chalom liftoroto. You hear and you say, it's amazing. What would he say? He says, oh, your honor, your majesty, you haven't seen my resume. You know, go to Shatchan, he'll give you sheker dover, mamash, you'll have tuma, mamash, Megillat Esther, right? You know who I am? I've done this. No. He says, Biladai, it's not me. I'm in nothing. Elokim ya'aneh shalom paro. Elokim, who you don't believe in. Who's your biggest competition? That's whom I believe in. So we are completely different. You're going this way. I'm going this way. I think you're going to go to the Madura Shvi'i of Geinam, right? But if you want, I could tell you what Hashem will reveal to me. Can you imagine somebody having the guts of saying that? Well, that's Yosef. That's why the Pasuk says, V'haya bet Yaakov le'esh, bet Yosef le'lehava, ubet Esav le'kash. Yaakov is the fire. It's the kachelet. It's hot. It's the zchut of Torah. But it doesn't have a flame. It could be in his own bubble. It could be doing great in the Bet Midrash. But Yosef is the lehava of Yaakov. Is the flame. It's a torch. It's a fire thrower. And it will completely dismantle and destroy Esav like fire would destroy the kash, the straw. That's the power of Yosef. The power of being true to a person's values in front of the goyim, in front of the pressures of galut. You wonder why Mashiach ben Yosef has to be there before Mashiach ben David, because we cannot face the umot without this energy of Yosef. Bechor shoro hadarlo, vekarneh re'em karnaf. He's a shor, he's a kosher shofar. But he also deals with the goyim, karneh re'em karnav, bahem amimi anagach yachtav avsearis. He's going to, you know, when reward Ephraim, Alfei Menashe, right? The famous pasuk, the Ephraim and Menashe, Haben Yakir li Ephraim. Hashem expresses his love only to Ephraim, the Shevet of Yosef. The first king that ever comes, right, is Shaul, which is from Rachel Imenu, right? The koach of Rachel, the koach of Yosef and Binyamin is really the koach that we need for our galut, and this is something so powerful and so beautiful to keep in mind, Bezrat Hashem, as we read the parasha. Amen. Ki niratzon.